Great. Well, thanks so much, Lauren and Lindsay. We really appreciate you all being able to join in today. And thanks to those of you who've been able to join in for today's webinar. I'm Catherine Maddox. I'm the Project Director for Energy Partnerships here at the National Community Action Partnership. I just want to share a little bit about our project, the Weatherization Leverage Partnerships Project. We are funded by the Department of Energy to offer training and assistance to the WAP network in designing private partnerships and programs to leverage your WAP dollars. So we are here to assist you as you reach out to utilities or other partners to raise those non-federal leverage funds. We have tools and resources for you and are available to speak with you. And this might be a good time as you are looking into other maybe longer term projects that you're doing while you're working remotely. So we can talk further for sure. My email is kmaddox@communityactionpartnership.com, and we'll be happy to talk further. So with that, I do want to jump into presenting our speaker for today, Lindsay Marsh. So Lindsay comes to the partnership from the Office of Community Services at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Her previous work has taken her across the country, working issue and political campaigns, organizing, doing data research, and fundraising. Lindsay is a former small business owner. She co-founded a social media company specializing in online fundraising and social justice work and a liquor distribution company. Long an advocate of civic and social engagement, she's thrilled to work on a project that combines her extensive organizing skills with the real-world effects that the census brings to the population that the network serves the most. Lindsay holds a bachelor's degree in international affairs and a master's degree in political management, both from the George Washington University. In her spare time, Lindsay is an avid cyclist, runner, and triathlete. She's based out of Denver, Colorado. Thanks so much, Lindsay. Over to you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk a little bit about the census and how it impacts your community today. I do want to make sure that everyone knows that we are here to answer questions. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will answer them as we go. Catherine is also staying on the phone with us online, so she can answer questions if you have any crossover. We're here as resources for you. So let's dive in. Oh. Is this the right? Sorry, this is not my slide. Catherine, is this your slide? Sorry, we've had some confusion.
Just go right ahead to where your slides begin.
Okay. All right. So we've already talked about this. So let's get into the census. The census is a process that we do every 10 years in America. So we've been doing it since 1790. This is something that our founding fathers, a method to make sure that we were allocating funds and resources and, back in the day, Revolutionary War debt appropriately and evenly across the states. So the census is codified in the Constitution. It is Article 1, Section 2, so it's really early in the Constitution. And it states that we count the whole number of persons living in America. That's an important distinction because it means that we count people who have green cards. We count diplomats. We count your British cousin who's staying with you for 6 months, so long as they have been living with you over April 1st. We count people who are undocumented because they live in this country. Conversely, we don't count people who live abroad who are American citizens. So expatriates are not counted because we're looking for the total number of people who live on American soil. And it is part of the Constitution. There are about 10 questions on the census form, and this had lots of legal wrangling all summer last year, but these are the 10 questions that are on that form. They ask you age, they also ask date of birth, they will ask about Hispanic origin, they will also ask about race. Those are two separate questions. The race question this year has been modified, so it's not just a checkbox where you pick one thing or another. So I am white, I am from German and English ancestry, so I checked the box that said white, and then it asks what country or where your origins are, and so I put Germany and England. Obviously that's very different for everybody. We're hoping that the Census Bureau is looking for additional demographic data of our country, which is why they're asking that. And they changed it this year because people who are multi-ethnic in 2010 were disappointed that they couldn't put their true heritage, which is why that question is the way it is. They're going to ask how each person on the census form is related to person number 1. I think one of the comments that we're going to have as a coalition, which our census asked how the 2020 census went, is that I have a friend who filled out the form whose stepchildren live with her, but they're not married yet, so they're her fiance's children. She ended up putting that the relationship was stepchildren, but she was a little upset that she couldn't put in somehow codifying the relationship between her children, the children and their father, because he wasn't person number 1. But they're trying to get at the general makeup of an American household. They are going to ask if you are male or female. There's been some chatter, and my guess is that in 2030 there will be a non-binary or a transgender option. If somebody is non-binary or gender neutral or transgender, they should simply pick the best, whichever male or female fits them best. And that's not a great answer, but it is where we are. And then they're going to ask about the tenure of your house. Do you own? Do you rent? Is this an RV? They're trying to get a semblance of the housing situation in America. And then there are a few operational questions. How many people lived here on April 1st? How many people stayed here on April 1st? Because often, especially in the communities that we serve, somebody staying here on April 1st technically might be living with them, but staying versus living is something that trips some people up. So a good case in point, if you're a grandmother taking care of a grandchild and you don't want to usurp the parents' power to put their children on a census form, but the kid lives with you and you are the caretaker, you are that guardian. Technically that child, you might consider them staying with you long term, but they're living with you, and so you should include them on that form. So that question tries to get at those folks. And then possibly in the era of COVID-19, which we will talk about, the most important thing that they ask is for the telephone number and the person who is filling out the form. The Census Bureau does quality assurance checks. Sometimes they do that at the door, but if this information is filled out, then the Census Bureau won't need to send somebody to a door. So that's important information. This is it. This is all that's on the survey. Some people might remember that in years past, there has been something called the short survey and something called the long survey. In 2005, the Census Bureau replaced the long survey with something called the American Community Survey. So 1% of America gets the American Community Survey every year on a rolling basis. So it happens every year, not just every 10 years. And it asks the more invasive questions that people associate with the census, like how do you commute to work? And how much work did you do in the last year? And how much money did you make? None of those questions are on the decennial 2020 census. It is just these questions. Yep. What the census will not ask for, and this is important because a lot of people have a lot of fear about giving the government this information. They won't ask for social security numbers. They will not ask for bank or credit card information. If someone is asking for your bank account information, it is a scam, and you should delete that as soon as you possibly can in your email inbox. They are not asking citizenship status. They're not asking for anything political. They're not asking for money or donations of any kind, and they're not asking what your household income is. I use all of these in conjunction with the other. I don't ever say one of these no's. I use all of them in part because the citizenship status question is highly controversial. It was almost added to the census last summer. It became a political fight. And a lot of people, especially people who are Hispanic, have a lot of fear around the citizenship status question, which is not on the census form. But I say all of these at once because if you just flat out say, oh, there's no citizenship question, research has shown that that raises people's alarm bells. But if you couch it in other things that the census doesn't ask for, it quells fears a little bit better. So, but it is also true that the other 5 things on this list are not asked on that census form. So once we have this questionnaire filled out by everybody, what do we do with the data? Why do we do this, right? So the main 2 functions of the census are to apportion congressional representation and to distribute federal funding. And we at Community Action care about both of those things. The apportionment, the way they do things, they count everybody who lives in the country. They divide that total number by 435 because there are 435 seats in Congress. And that gives them the number that each district has to have in population to be a seat. In 2010, Pennsylvania had 19 congressional districts. Their population actually didn't change all that much between 2000 and 2010, but the population of the other states around them did change. So their 19 seats became 18 seats because when the count was done, they only had enough people in Pennsylvania to qualify for 18 seats. The average number of people per congressional seat is about 720 right now. We think it's going to be around 810 when we're done counting. But that means that congressional seats have to reallocate themselves based on the most recent population. The next thing that they do in 2021 will be redistrict. So when Pennsylvania lost that seat, everyone in Pennsylvania still needed to have representation in Congress. So they had to reallocate that 19th district fairly among the other 18 districts to make sure that each district had 720,000 people and that all people in Pennsylvania had a congressional representative. Long-winded explanation. Let's move on. It doesn't just impact our federal level, though. It also impacts our state level. The census data is used to draw districts for state house districts and state senate districts, school districts, and voting districts. School districts are interesting. So not every school district will reallocate every year, but one of the reasons they do this, a great on-the-ground example, is that if you have a school that's overflowing with kids and that the next district over is an underpopulated school, you can use the census data to redraw those school districts so your schools aren't overcrowded or undercrowded, and you can fairly allocate those resources. Distributing federal dollars. This is probably why Community Action is involved most of all. The counts that we do, the census data is used in formulas for federal funding. Clearly, we're most interested in LIHEAP dollars and WAP dollars today. But those formulas, the LIHEAP new formula, the LIHEAP old formula, all of that, one of the numbers that they use to calculate that out are census numbers. So if we have a complete count, we get the funding that we deserve for the programs that we work with. These federal dollars also fund our highway transportation programs, education dollars, in addition to all the anti-poverty programs. And I've got a slide to talk about all those programs. But it's really important for our bottom line. All of our agencies also do community needs assessments, and census data is used in that. So if we don't have an accurate census count when we do our community needs assessment every 3 years, we don't have an accurate picture of our service area, and we might make decisions that aren't the best choices for our areas. So it really does impact quite a bit. Government planning, they use census data to inform decisions on a federal level. Where do they put in an Army base? Where do they put a federal building? And local level uses census data to determine how legislation they're contemplating will impact their community. Organizational decisions. My neighborhood is relatively new. It's about 2 years old. We have a lot of kids in our neighborhood. There's one gelato store, and they're pretty busy. So I wouldn't be surprised if after the 2020 census is completed, we see a pop-up of more ice cream stores as these business owners look at the data and think, oh, there are a lot of kids in that neighborhood. I bet we could really do well with an ice cream store. So it really hits a local level. And one of the reasons why they ask for that Hispanic data and the race data in those 10 questions is to enforce voting rights and civil rights legislation. If we don't know where people who are disproportionately affected and are protected by those rights and those laws, then we don't know where to allocate funds and make sure that we're watching to make sure that we're implementing those laws effectively. So we are in the middle of the census right now. I mean, it was just last week that we hit Census Day, but the process started a few weeks ago. And by this point, most everyone in America has received at least an invitation, if not an invitation and a follow-up postcard. There are some changes to this. COVID-19 is changing the way we do our census this year. But an invitation to respond online should have been sent to most households that middle of March period, the 12th to the 20th. The Census Bureau is newly online this time. So the response has been pushed to the website. You can also respond over the phone. Both of those methods are new. The traditional way to fill out the decennial census is through the paper form that's sent to your mailbox. So most people should have received an invitation at this point asking them to go to my2020census.gov and complete the form online or to call the hotline. Those reminder postcards and letters went out that the next 2-week period. This week, we're starting to see paper questionnaires sent out to folks. And so people are getting that in their mailboxes. The next 2 phases have been changed because of COVID-19. They will send another postcard in April for households that have not yet filled out the form. And then they were supposed to start knocking doors in the second week of May on any house that hasn't responded yet. Because of COVID-19, currently the Census Bureau has halted all in-person operations. So they are not doing that enumeration until May 28th. I'm expecting that to change. I'm just not sure when and how it will. But I do expect that the pandemic will impact that as well. They have already changed the dates on response time. So the previous deadline to fill out your census form was July 31st. And they've already extended that 2 weeks because of the pandemic, because we know that this is a harder thing for us to be doing right now, especially because everyone, especially our customers, are in large part worried about the job they just lost, and they're already on the edge of making it. And so this is asking them to fill out a government form seems, I've heard people comment that it seems a little out of touch and a little insensitive. The problem is that this is so important, we still have to find a way to reach people about it. So the one thing I did not talk about is Census Day. So Census Day was last Wednesday. And the importance of that day is that April 1st is whenever you fill out your form between March 12th and August 14th, you think about who lived in your house on April 1st. That's how we take a snapshot of America. Because we know people move and people are born and people die. And so if we didn't have that one day that everyone thinks about when they fill out their form, we would miss a lot of people, or we would lose a lot of people. Or we might double count people as well. So April 1st is the day that you think about when you fill out your form. Who lived with me? Who was in my household last Wednesday? The caveat to that this time around is that if you have a college student who lives off campus, well, actually just if you have a college student at all who is not living at home, who returned home because their school was shut down, they should still be counted at school. So if you have an off-campus apartment, even if you're staying with your parents on April 1st, you've moved home, you still use your apartment address at school. College dorms are counted by the schools and the universities, but it's that off-campus population that we're worried about. They should not be included because they would typically be at school. And I think that's good guidance for anyone else who's moved around during the pandemic. Wherever you would typically be on April 1st is where you should fill out the form. So if you would, I live in Denver. If I typically live in Denver, but I've moved in with my family members in Colorado Springs to weather out the pandemic, but I plan to return to Denver when everything is said and done and shakes out, I would use my Denver address. So it's a little bit of a change. We're waiting for some actual guidance from the Census Bureau on that. So the non-response follow-up visit is door knocking. So right now with COVID, we are encouraging people to fill out the form themselves over the phone or online, or this week that option to do the paper ballot is there. The other problem that we're having right now, especially in rural America, is that these several, it's called Operation Leave. There are lots of places that use P.O. boxes in rural America. The Census Bureau cannot have mail sent to a P.O. box. So if you live in farm country and you go into town to get your mail from the P.O. box every week or so, you will not get an invitation in your mailbox. The Census Bureau is supposed to hand drop packets for census completion at all of those households. And because of the restrictions for the pandemic, that operation has been suspended at least 2 more weeks. April 15th, but I think it'll be longer. So we have wide swaths of America that live in rural areas or tribal lands that have not yet been invited to complete their census form, even though the rest of America got their first invitations almost a month ago. So that's something that we're contending with as well. We're going to send this PowerPoint out to everyone who is watching today. So I did link all of the Census Bureau timeline adjustments to this. And I will tell you that it's changed twice already. It's going to change again, but this is the guideline that we have for it. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the census operations. The census hires hundreds of thousands of people a cycle. The estimate was that they were going to hire 520,000 people this year. They spend $15 billion to do this every 10 years. Well, that's about what they spent in 2010. They spent a lot of money on this. This is the largest non-military ground operation that the U.S. government engages in. And the reason it costs so much is, if you can see here, in 1970 it was about $16, and those are $20 to count a household, and today it's $107. And I think the next slide shows a little bit about why that is. But we care so much because every person that we count is worth about $2,000 in federal funding for your community. So again, going back to how the Census Bureau uses census data, I'm sorry, not the Census Bureau, other programs use census data to figure out, to allocate resources. LIHEAP uses census data to figure out how much money in funding LIHEAP programs get across each state. So for every person that we count, about $2,000 comes back into the community for federal funding of programs that we use. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important. So what accounts for that $16 to $107 jump? We have a very mobile population, and COVID-19 is exacerbating that problem. Especially in the communities that we serve, people tend to move a lot. You lose a job, you end up leaving, you get evicted, you stay with friends for a little bit, you have to move in with your mom for a few months. People who live in our communities tend to move, about 30% of them move a year, and often that 30% moves more than once in a year. The rest of the general population of America, the statistic is 12 to 14% move annually. We have a constrained fiscal environment. Everything that the COVID has changed all of that. The Congress has been fighting about how much money to spend on this. One side says we're going online, it's going to be cheaper. The other side says it's new technology, and we still need to hit areas without broadband access. So there's been a huge fight in Congress for the past year about how much to fund this operation. We have information explosion and a rapidly changing use of technology. We all carry smartphones. We all have these little computers in our hands at all times. They ding, that you get text messages, you get news alerts, you get Amber alerts, you have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, TikTok, I think that's a thing. You have lots of things happening on your phone. There's information overload, especially now that COVID-19 is everything 24/7. We have to break through that clutter somehow. And we also have problems with the mail. People aren't getting their mail right now because they're afraid it's infected. Or people didn't get their mail to begin with very often because they figure, if it's important, I'll get an email about it. So we have that information explosion we need to break through. There's a massive distrust in government. The citizenship question exacerbated that problem for sure. But just today, the partisan politics era that we're living in has really, excuse me, there's a cat, she can say hi. We're all working from home. So distrust in government because of the current political environment is really at an all-time high And so if you don't trust the government, why are you going to give them information about your family and your who lives with you? The answer is because it benefits your community, and the answer is because the Census Bureau probably has that data in other ways already, or at least enough to double check, because they get records from the IRS, they get records from HUD or Health and Human Services, Homeland Security. They do not give information to any of those agencies. They keep it under their own umbrella. They don't disseminate information. They do not share private information they collect during the Census Bureau. But they do get information from other agencies, and so they can corroborate what you put down on your form. So the government kind of already has it, but it doesn't matter if you don't fill out the form. That $2,000 per person only comes to your community if you fill out your census form. We also have an increasingly diverse population, immigration. You've got lots of people who have probably never done a census before. They don't know what it is. They didn't learn about it in American civic classes because they came from abroad. So there's an education piece there as well. And informal complex living arrangements is the last real stickler here. Mentioned a grandmother taking care of their grandchild a little bit earlier. That's often that grandmother won't include that grandchild, which means that the schools will be a little bit underfunded because you didn't count that kid. You also have divorced parents who counts the kids. Technically, wherever the kid spends the majority of their year, so 50+% of their year, and if that doesn't work because it's a 50-50 custody arrangement, wherever the kids spent April 1st. I will say that if you have a choice between overcounting or undercounting, so if you have a choice between both of those parents filling out that form and including that child versus neither parent, please overcount. The Census Bureau can dedupe records, but they cannot make up information that they don't have. So the Census Bureau has identified these categories, I think there are 17 of them, of people who are traditionally undercounted. So I've already mentioned kids. We missed 2 million children in the 2010 census. We also often miss as a country people with low income, people with disabilities, senior citizens are often missed, people of color. It's a veritable who's who of community action. These are the people that we serve every day. Which is one of the reasons why we're involved. All right, so I've outlined a little bit about the census. Let's talk about how it could impact you. Those populations that are the hardest to count and are the least likely to fill out the census happen to be the customers we work with every day. This is our community. These are our people. We are trusted messengers. These folks come in when they are at the lowest of their low. They need the most help that they can get, and we help them. And so we are trusted messengers. And so if we say to them, the census is important and we really need you to fill it out to better your community, they're more likely to listen to us because they trust us already. And if we tell them that it's safe and easy and important, they'll hear that message. The most important thing that we need to make sure of is that the people we serve get their fair share of federal dollars and that representation. I know people tend to feel like the money is more important, but it's equally important to have a voice in Congress. If you have a district that's majority living in poverty, and maybe you should be 2 districts, but you didn't count half the people in your area, that's a whole nother voice that can go to Washington, D.C. and advocate for you and advocate for the things that your community needs. So it is really important, and it happens on a state level as well. This is the slide that I promised you about other programs. So CSBG funding is census driven, and all of us get some CSBG money. That's why we're here. LIHEAP, weatherization programs also are impacted. Head Start, Section 8 housing vouchers, healthcare centers, all of these programs, which is 9%, $77 billion are up for grabs. And if we don't have accurate counts, then our communities don't get the money that they need. So the money is important. It's really important. We are reaching out to you, and one of the reasons I'm so thrilled that Catherine invited us today is because you folks interact with 3 of the most undercounted groups in the country. So kids from 0 to 4, kids from 5 to 9 are 2 of the most undercounted groups. Again, 2 million children were missed in the 2020 census. And people fill out their own forms, but they don't include their children. So that's a unique situation. Other people who are undercounted simply don't fill out the form. Senior citizens and people with disabilities are also missed frequently. The National Disability Rights, I'm always going to get it wrong. National Disability Rights Association did a study, and it was something like 10%, 9% had filled out the census form in prior years when they were talking to people, adults with disabilities. The rest of them had never been invited. So either they missed the form in the mailbox, they didn't know to look for it, it didn't seem important, or somehow their housing complex was missed off the list of the master mail file for the Census Bureau. That statistic is staggering. When you have about 30% of our population, adult population, that has a disability, the fact that we've missed that many people is really, really, it's astounding. Missing all of these populations means that we get less WIC funding. We get less money for Meals on Wheels. We get less money for education. Our education system's chronically underfunded in this country because we missed 2 million children in 2010. Section housing vouchers, all of these programs are implemented in part because of census data. So we're coming to you today because you might not be in the field right now doing weatherization work, but hopefully you'll be back in the field in a few weeks' time. And we're hoping that you can make mention of the census to every household that you visit, to every customer that you interact with. One reason people don't fill out the census is because they don't feel like the government needs to know about them. And yet, if they're in our service area and we are providing services to them, the government already knows that they exist, and we might as well get the funding for it, right? So a little bit of education goes a really long way towards getting people to participate. And the census form, as we saw earlier with those 10 questions, far less invasive than any RIHEAP form. Most of the forms that people use to apply for assistance like this are far more intensive. So the government already knows the information. Did I skip? No, I didn't. So these are some palm cards that we have available. We are printing and shipping these for free for anyone who would like them. So if you have a way, if you're currently contacting clients in any way, customers, and you have any way to put one of these in someone's hand, we would love to send them to you. So the one on the left is just a generic, more generic card for anybody that we created specifically for weatherization teams and for transportation drivers, people who give rides. The one on the right, if you are in rural America, that is more specifically for rural American areas. So both of these are available. We can either work with a printer in your area that you already work with and help stimulate their bottom line a little bit, or we have a printer in Alexandria, Virginia that has been printing and shipping things for us. So either way, we also have a whole suite of flyers and pamphlets. So there are other things as well, but I want to make sure that that offer is out there. And my contact information is at the end of this PowerPoint. So you can reach out to me and I can send you a list of what we have, and or you can simply give me your address and tell me how many you'd like. Like Catherine's email, mine is L for Lindsay, L Marsh, M-A-R-S-H at communityactionpartnership.com. All right, so I did a little digging into folks with disabilities because I know it's one of the groups that our weatherization teams interact with regularly. Nearly 1 in 5 people with disabilities live in areas considered hard to count. So that 17 category group that has been identified as often undercounted. Nearly 1 in 5 people with disabilities live in those areas. So this is a huge demographic for us and somewhere we can make a really big impact. Again, we're going to send this PowerPoint out. So on the right-hand side, I have linked a state-by-state article. So if you have a chart, a graph. So if you are interested in more detail, you can look there. Oh, whoa, sorry. Let's try that. So let's talk about COVID-19 a little bit more. Clearly, the dates have already changed a little bit because of COVID-19. And clearly, it's changing how you folks are operating and what you can do. But even if you're not out in the field, you can still make an impact. There are ways to do that. And I don't know if you want to tell us what you've been up to, you should feel free to tell us how you've been interacting with clients and what we can provide for you to make this easy. But if you talk to any customer at all, any grantee, you can ask them about the census. Hey, did you fill out the census form? Did you get the census form? And you can tell them a little bit about it. And if you, we can also send those palm cards digitally. You can include a fact sheet in any email that you send to anybody. If you have an email signature file, you can update your email signature to say the census is here. Please click here, and we have that language on our website. Anything you're doing on social media, if you can make mention of the census, that's really, really great. Because the more they hear it from folks, the better, the more likely they are to participate. For any of you who also have light heat programs and are going to do a cooling season mailer, we will print you flyers, and we'll send you flyers so you can include that in the mailing so everybody gets notification about how to fill out the census and why it's important in that mailer. So overall, because of COVID, we are trying to avoid people going, having the Census Bureau have to go knock doors. When this lifts, when these restrictions lift, people are still going to be tentative, and I know that you're probably going to impact that as not impact. You're going to be impacted by that as well. When you get back out in the field, people might not be as willing to have you come over and make adjustments and fix up their house. We know that that's going to be a thing. In the meantime, for us, for census, we want people to self-respond. They need to fill out the paper form. They get it this week. They can go online. I will say that the phone lines have experienced really high call volume. Plus, they've been having some staffing issues because of COVID. They are still up and running, but there might be a 30 or 45-minute wait is what we've been hearing. They're trying to add a callback feature. So instead of waiting in line, you can wait for a call back, but it's been slow to implement. So we're hoping that'll happen in a couple of weeks. Right now, the best way, if you have broadband access, to complete your census form is to go online to www.my2020census.gov. Because I like data. I pulled this from today. The states that are light blue have reached the 51% or more response threshold. The states that are darkest orange, Maine, Vermont, West Virginia, New Mexico, Wyoming, Montana, are all lagging behind the most. Actually, Alaska's the most. Alaska's a very dark orange that I didn't include in the map. So this next bunch of states are slightly better, but they're under 40%. And then the lighter yellow, the yellowish lighter orange states have reached that 40% threshold. So there are some states that are doing really well. There are some states who aren't doing as well with their outreach. And some of it makes sense. I mean, New York City right now is a huge part of New York, which is probably why they're yellow instead of blue, because they've been pretty busy with the outbreak right now. That map is from the CUNY, City University of New York, hard to count map system. So it's fun to play with. You can go and click on your town. You can click on your county. You can get statistics for everyone who lives in your area. You can see where the response rate has been going well, or it hasn't been. I will notice that the states with higher concentrations of people of color are not doing as well as states that tend to be whiter. So if you have people of color in your service area, we really need to encourage them to respond. These maps are cool because you can see how they're getting their invitations. So if you wonder if your rural area didn't get their packets left at the doorstep or not, you can go in and see how they were supposed to get their packets. And if it was update leave is what they call it, leave those packages, it hasn't happened yet. So you can see that, and you can see how that is impacting the response rate. I like to play with this because I like the data. They also have some data about how to target hard to count kids, like where those hard to count kids are located, because they know that. They also can tell you where bilingual ballots were dropped, not ballots, bilingual census forms. So English and Spanish was sent out to a certain percentage of the communities because they know that those communities are bilingual. Some places got paper forms with that very first mailer. My aunt, who lives in Peoria, Illinois, for some reason got that mailer when she got her invitation, and I haven't been able to figure out why, because I haven't drilled down into the data to see what impacts her area. But my guess is that they have data from the past 15 years since they started the American Community Survey that talks about the response rates and how that area tends to respond the best. So in any of these situations, if somebody has not gotten an invitation, they should still go online and fill out their census form. Those invitations include unique ID codes that are tied to each address. You do not need an ID code to fill out the census. It is helpful for the census for you to have it, but you do not need it. So if you go to my2020census.gov, you click Start Questionnaire. The next box, you'll see there's a box that for your ID. Directly below that box, it says, click here if you don't have an ID, and you can fill out a non-ID response using your address. Same goes if someone was forgotten. If you didn't realize that you needed to include your basement tenant in your census form, you would also go online and do a non-ID response to add that person to your census. Ideally, you complete the entire census all over again, but it's better to just add that one person and just complete it for that one person than to not do it at all. They have toll-free numbers. 844-330-2020 is the English hotline. They have 13 different languages over the phones: Vietnamese, Mandarin, Spanish, hard of hearing. So they have different ways to communicate with people verbally. They also have 59 different language packets translated on the website. So they have done some work to make sure that we have it in language for communities that need it. All right, I'm running low on time, so I'm going to run through some of this quickly because I want to make sure we have time for questions. We have partnered with the Census Bureau. We are working with them. They have regional offices. They have partnership specialists all across the country. If people are interested in reaching out to the Census Bureau, they have resources, but not as important as other things. They also have complete count committees. These are local committees that have been created throughout the country, coordinating efforts. So your town or your county might have a complete count committee that might include, say, the mayor and the nonprofits that are in the area that serve hard to count populations, or the business community, that all come together to make sure that they're working in tandem and they're not duplicating efforts in their communities. So if you have information, if you want information on how your particular area is adapting to COVID-19, for example, you can use this website link at the bottom of the slide, and you can find your community complete count committee. We are part of a coalition, and so here it is. I always get it wrong. The National Disability Rights Network was very helpful in putting together some of this information today. But we have all of these community members as part of our coalition, and it's a cross-section of America. So we include disability rights. We include NALEO, which is the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, the ARC, Coalition on Human Needs, Faith in Public Life, that has been pushing census sermon weekends. They tried to make sure that we got a cross-section of America represented, and they're resources for us. So if there's a language that you need that the Census Bureau doesn't provide already, I can ask this group for you. So please feel free to reach out if you need something like that. You can find the partnership specialists, and I left this slide in here because the link at the bottom can tie you to what the other coalition members are doing in your area. So you could, in theory, reach out to them and figure out how they're impacting their communities in an era of COVID. My job is to educate and increase awareness about the census and help all of you do some in-field work. My job is to make it easy for you to talk about the census with anyone you come in contact with, and to make sure that you have the tools that you need. To that end, this is our website, communityactionpartnership.com/census-2020. That's where you can find the palm cards that I showed you a few slides back. And all of our fact sheets, we've got toolkits. We've got a VITA toolkit and a general toolkit for census engagement. And all the flyers. We also have a COVID-19 update page where, as the Census Bureau makes changes, we are keeping up to date. So people who are following us know how things are shaking out. I have also been putting response update numbers every day when the data dump comes out, so you can follow the trajectory of how well we're doing overall as a country. So what can you do? Our goal is to make this easy for you to talk about as you do your other work. We have not, very specifically, not asked folks to dedicate an entire person to census outreach. We know that's out of budget range. But what we do think is easy enough is for folks to slip in a mention of the census as they're talking about the weatherization plan for their house, or when they're talking about enrolling their kid in Head Start. So whatever services your agency offers, it's easy enough to add that layer of just a quick 30 to 60-second conversation about the census and why it's important. We do have those flyers and those postcards. We also have many recorded webinars. There are several of me going further into depth on a lot of these issues. And we have a 7-minute video and 14 under 2-minute videos available. Some of them are in English, some of them are in Spanish. One of the best things that we can do, okay, I'll talk about this and I'll go back in a second, is our Moodle Academy. So for those of you who are at home working remotely and you're looking for training opportunities, I cannot emphasize enough how good of a resource Moodle is. Our learning communities has been using this for quite some time. We have added a census track. So in under 2 hours, you can go online. It is an online education site, and you can complete our Census Basics webinar and get certified in the census in under 2 hours. So we are strongly encouraging anyone who is looking for training opportunities to go check out our Moodle Academy. It is found at moodle.communityactionpartnership.com, and see what we have that you are interested in that you can train yourself in while we're waiting for the pandemic to pass a little bit. It's free for all Community Action Agency members, so you have access to that, and we encourage you to do so. Go back for just a second. We talk a lot about the right messaging, and I think I have a slide about general messages for our populations. If at all possible, we're hoping that your weatherization touch can be one of 7 that each person gets from your agency about the census, because marketing research shows that somebody has to hear something 7 times for them to internalize it. So if you can leave them a postcard, that's one touch. And if they come to the agency when things lift and restrictions are a thing of the past and people can, they see a poster in the front lobby, they see a button on the person that they're meeting with, or the front desk receptionist staff. Those are all touches, and it helps reinforce. And just remember, we're trusted providers, and so we have the ability to give this message with some authority. These are stills of our videos rather. The top left-hand corner is the 7-minute video. The other 2 are shorter, and there are several others on our website. The messaging. So our partners did some in-depth focus group research and survey research for children, because the question was, why do people forget their kids all the time? So they wanted to dig into why a couple would put themselves in a form and not include their children. And then they needed to figure out how to convince those parents to put their kids on their form. So we did some research into how and why those kids were missed. But then they also, NALEO did a whole focus group study of Hispanics and Latinos. Asian American research was done by the Asian Americans for Social Justice. The National College of American Indians did the Native American research. And the African American research, I want to say it was done by Color of Change, but it could have been the NAACP or the Urban League. I think it was Color of Change. Across all of these groups, the best message was that filling out the census form helped their community by bringing federal funding. So all across, I mean, there are nuances for sure, which is why at the bottom of this slide, I linked all of the research. So if you are interested, you can look at all of the raw research presentations, actually. You can also email me. I have individual slides for all of those groups. So if you have a Native American population that you serve and you want to know what messaging works best for Native Americans, in a lot of ways, it's that they need to be counted so they're not erased. That message resonated a lot. But overall, the best message for all of our groups that are undercounted is filling out the census brings $2,000 to your community in federal funding. A couple of basics if you participate if you're not a citizen, and I have an entire list of frequently asked questions like this. Yes, you do. Did it come to my house? Generally, the conventional wisdom is if you fill out your form, they're unlikely to come to your house. Now, again, it's been pushed back until May 28th, that door knocking is supposed to begin. We're pushing self-response as the best way to reach people and get them to fill out the form so they don't have to interact with a Census Bureau employee. Is it safe? I talked a little bit about some of the protections about how the Census Bureau doesn't disseminate information. There are three main protections. The first is that by law, they are not allowed to give information to other agencies. They can only use any of this data for statistical purposes. Personal census data is not disclosed. There's no way for you to say, oh, Joe Smith down on Main Street, this is his information. They cannot give that information out. There's something called Title 13, which is an oath that all Census Bureau employees take on their very first day that says if they do disclose personal information for any one individual, they can be jailed for up to 5 years and they can be fined up to $250,000. So it's serious. And they've never had to prosecute anyone under that because the Census Bureau takes a lot of pride in their charge. In 72 years, the forms we fill out today will be disclosed. So we might have a Section 8 housing voucher recipient who is really worried because 4 people live in her house, not the 3 that were supposed to on her form. In 72 years, that landlord, if they're still alive, might be able to access that information because it will be released by the Census Bureau. But my guess is that in 72 years, that landlord won't care anymore if they're around at all. So it's a protection. If you do genealogy research, people are super excited that in 2022, all of the forms that we filled out in 1950 will be released. And if you think about that, like that was literally a lifetime ago. So that's one of the security precautions that they've put in place to make sure that this is a safe process. Skip the slide, but the other thing about safety and security is that in an age of a super highly contagious transmittable virus that can be deadly, people can also be concerned about interacting with people about the census. I don't want to fearmonger anyone and say, oh, if you don't fill out your census form, someone's going to bring COVID-19 to your door to take your census. That's not what we're trying to convey at all. We are saying, though, that the safest way to do it is to call over the phones or to complete it online or to fill out your paper form when it arrives in the mail. You can help people fill out their census form. A lot of people rely on us to help them fill out forms of all types every day. So you can help them. What you can't do is something you wouldn't do anyway, which is say, oh, I know that they're never going to fill out their form. I'm just going to do it for them online. That is not okay. But you can certainly assist somebody who asks you to help them fill out their form. Accessibility issues, I can add before I send this out a link to some of the disability resources. So there's a way to get a Braille form. There's a way to get large format print, things like that. Our partners, the National Disabilities Rights Agency, has provided a lot of that detail. So I'll add that link in here because it is possible. So time is running short. We encourage all of you to follow us on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Facebook has proven to be one of the best ways for us to reach our customers. So we encourage that. We encourage you to reach out to anybody on social media and encourage anyone any way you can to complete the census because it's such a vital building block for our democracy. We also have a private Facebook group that's connected to the National Partnership Facebook page for just census engagement. So you can feel free to join that. Fill out the questions, please, so I know that you are community action and I can add you to it. But we're talking about the updates and things that are happening and sharing daily statistics and the like. This has our resources, and I will take questions. I haven't seen any come in, but I just talked for a long time, so I'm sure we have some. Catherine,
Thanks, Lindsay.
Have you seen any questions? Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen any questions come in?
Yes, we have. So one we just wanted to clarify, it sounds like the palm cards are on the website. Is that what you mentioned? folks were thinking about being able to maybe print those off at their offices by chance.
Yes, where are they? Oh, here, it's the first link on this resources page. It's also communityactionpartnership.com/census-2020. You can also shoot me an email and I can send them to you. We are happy to print them for you if you don't want to print them in-house or can't. We have a printer standing by. So please let us pay for them. I have a budget for this, which you don't hear from the partnership very often. So please let me spend money on you. I'm happy to do that.
Great. And you know, not only to print them, but it may be an option if you know, as you may be interacting with customers during this time over phone or email. So perhaps as you're emailing them, this is the link that you could include at the bottom of your email. Also, the link to where to go to fill out the census could be a part of your signature line.
Yep.
So, and the other thing I was thinking about as well is we've been hearing a lot about the need for food assistance, obviously, in the last month. And so we know a lot of our local agencies are also participating in that. So that may be an option where if you know that your agency is seeing an influx of customers related to food or other services during this time, and say that part of your agency is open, I'd say maybe be in touch with those coworkers, see if they don't mind you ordering some palm cards for them. And then I think that might be a great way for you to get the word out to those folks coming in for food assistance right now, if those are the only customers we're seeing in person. So that might be an opportunity to think about. So we've shared Lindsay's email in the chat box, lmarsh@communityactionpartnership.com. That's where you'd be able to order more materials as you'd like. And I did want to just also double check again, if you could share with us, I think you mentioned the phone line, the language line, or the phone line that folks can use to be able to fill out the census. I assume that's also in multiple languages.
Yes, let me pull up that. It was a sneaky slide. Let me show folks. Here.
I know you mentioned, I think it was 59 languages related to the form.
So this palm card on the right has the languages that are available over the phone. So it's sideways, I'll read it to you. English, Spanish, Chinese, there are 2 versions of Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Russian, Arabic, Tagalog, Polish, French, Haitian Creole, Portuguese, and Japanese. And then I can include the link for all of the 59 languages that the Census Bureau has done in the follow-up email for this. We also have, I just found Burmese because our Asian American partners did a translation in Burmese. I think we also have Karen and Chin. So there are other languages that are available that our partners have done. So we've been doing translations as the network in Spanish because we don't really have the funding to do additional languages. But if you need something and it's none of the 59 languages that the census translated, ask me because I can likely find it.
Great. Another question we have is an attendee saying, I'm concerned about counting the people of color. What would be the best link that you'd recommend for folks to read so they can promote completing the census?
So I think that depends on which category we're talking. Are we talking Asian Americans? Are we talking African Americans? I can include links to major groups of color in the follow-up email. And if there's additional information you need, please ask me. So I can include Asian, African, Hispanic, and Indian for sure. But we have toolkits from all of our partners that talk about that languaging, messaging, and how to do that sort of thing. So we can do that.
Great. It sounds like she in particular is wanting to be able to reach more Latino Americans, it sounds like.
Okay. NALEO is leading the charge on that, which is the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, NALEO. They have all their resources in Spanish and in English. They have multiple toolkits. They have in Spanish memes and Facebook posts and Instagram posts. We have all that stuff in English that's branded for community action. But if you need something, if you want to take something that they have and add a huggy heart to it, reach out to me. We might be able to do that for you as well. But NALEO will have all those resources, and I'll make sure that that link is included in the follow-up.
Great. And then we do have a question, or just a comment really related to COVID-19, I guess a question. And so something I can try to help answer if you want to add to it, Lindsay. But Just saying, this attendee, you know, with the influx of people out of work and needing help with bills, just a question on if there's going to be funding in future stimulus packages. So more question than related to COVID-19 and what we're experiencing right now. So
sure.
Thank you for that question. And what I'd share with that is, as we receive information and learn about information here in Washington, D.C. or here at the national level, we are definitely looking to share that with you as soon as we hear about it. We do have a COVID-19 website on the communityactionpartnership.com site. So you can definitely be checking that regularly. You can also email or call any of us directly to ask us questions that you might have specifically. We have someone on staff who is following the COVID-19 legislation carefully, Ryan Gelman. So he is on point with that. So as if we hear of any additional future funding, we will definitely keep you posted. We are having, just to share with you, a weekly COVID-19 update webinar session every Thursday afternoon. Today's is actually starting right now at 3 o'clock, so you could join in on that one right afterward if you'd like. And we'll be having one next Thursday as well and ongoing as needed. So that's an opportunity to hear from all the national partners. You know, our CEO, Denise Harlow, you could hear from NASCAS. You can also hear from CAPLAW, NCAF as well, to be able to hear any updates that folks are learning about any additional funding. So thank you for your question on that. Let's see if there's any other questions that we have here. I think that, oh, we got maybe one more here. Okay, so I think that's the last of it. I would just share, you know, I had the opportunity to fill out my census just last week. I was just pleasantly surprised it took less than 10 minutes. It really is simple, easy, safe, like Lindsay's mentioning, so just spread the word. We really appreciate all you're doing. And Lindsay, I'll leave it to you to any final remarks.
Yeah, I know that this is a new era for all of us, and I am here to answer any questions about the census and to help any way that I can, as I know all of our staff as well we're here for you, and I'm so thrilled that you all joined us today to talk about the census. I look forward to questions and answers and sending you all palm cards, so please reach out.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. And with that, we'll end our webinar for today. Take care.